From League Safe World Headquarters, it's Fantasy Football Almost Daily. With Paul Charch, Matt Harrison, Christian Peterson, and Brian Johnson.
Welcome to the free agent edition of Fantasy Football Almost Daily. I am Paul Charchian. This is Brian Johnson, Matt Harrison. Hello, guys.
Hello.
It's
Guten
Tuesday.
Morgen.
It is Tuesday. That means we're talking free agents. Who to pick up, how much to spend. Frankly, that's kind of a bland week. I'll be honest.
I'm not going to spend any money in Fab this week, I decided already.
It just depends on who's available, what your roster composition is like. Are you desperate for a quarterback and you need Brian Hoyer? You know, that kind of thing.
I'm never that desperate.
That you need Brian Hoyer? Say that to the people who started him 3 straight weeks.
You know
Only
who
the
needs,
Chicago
you know who
Bears
needs Brian
are that
Hoyer?
desperate.
The Houston Texans right now need Brian Hoyer.
Yeah, they
Or Case
they,
Keenum.
They could.
The two guys they let go are performing. Granted,
Eventually.
Osweiler played the Vikings. You got to give him a little bit of
I know, but it's not just the
there.
Vikings. He had the Patriots 2 games before that.
Yeah.
And he's been humbled in those games, but those are good defenses.
We'll see how Hoyer does on Halloween night against the Vikings.
Yeah, that's coming up. Although overall, the schedule for the Bears is pretty favorable the rest of the way, including this week against Jacksonville. All right, let's dive. Let's start with the quarterback
we're
position.
already in,
apparently.
Brian
We're already
Hoyer.
in. So 3 straight games of 300 yards and 2 touchdowns at least. And I figured, all right, when was the last time Jay Cutler went 3 straight games with 300 yards and 3 touchdowns? If Hoyer can do it in his first 3 attempts for Chicago, you would think Cutler. Never. Not with the Bears, not with the Broncos. He's never done it before. It's clearly Brian Hoyer's job, and it's going to take a meltdown of the level like he had in the playoff loss before they even start to think about going back to Cutler, I believe.
So does this mean that Cutler just sits on the bench and pouts when he gets back?
Well, he pouted on the field, so would you know the difference?
Oh, man.
Well, someone asked John Fox, and he said they don't have a plan for when Jay Cutler comes back.
Yeah,
that means Jay Cutler's
not
going
coming
to be
back.
the starter when
No.
he comes back.
What a colossal distraction that will be for that team the rest of the year.
It will be a distraction for 1 week when it's clearly established that Cutler's healthy and sitting on the bench. But everybody's going to know why. I mean, there's not, it's not like it's even controversial. Romo's way more controversial. He will be cut at the end of the year. They're going to be done. And even though they won't necessarily have a long-term quarterback solution in place, the Bears are going to move on.
Are we done with Jay Cutler in the NFL? Do you think he gets another
No.
chance?
Yeah, he'll be somebody's backup quarterback, and maybe even he'll have the opportunity to go win a job he'll have an opportunity to go win a job and compete
whose
against
job he's going to win? Stu Beard's job.
It could be. He might be your Jets quarterback.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I'm calling Rams next year. His wife's got
Right,
the Laguna
Rams.
Beach in.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Got the
Rams
SoCal
starting
connection.
quarterback next
Yep.
year, Jay Cutler. All right, so Brian Hoyer, if in the event that you need a quarterback, you're in a 2-flex, you're in a super flex league or 2 quarterback league, then I think you can get aggressive and go maybe 10, 15% for a guy who's going to be a starting quarterback for the rest of the year on a offense that's performing pretty well.
Oh, and a great matchup this week.
And a great matchup with Jacksonville this week. And then but if you're not in a 2 quarterback league, then I think it's almost optional if you want to go get Hoyer.
Yeah.
The only other quarterbacks that you may be interested in, Tyrod Taylor's mostly owned. He's got a good matchup this week and next week, and then it turns awful. Trevor Siemian's going to go back under the helm, probably beginning Thursday. Bless you.
Luckily, we'll
No,
know.
it's more
It is the Thursday game this week, so we'll know early
We should.
whether or not that
Yes.
Simeon could be a plug and play this week.
He gets the battered Chargers secondary, and so that would be an opportunity to plug him in as a, sort of if only for a 1-week starter. But he gets to play the Oakland secondary in his own division too, and that's nice as well. So those are the only quarterbacks that have any real availability.
So those quarterbacks, I know that Sam Bradford is still widely available in a lot of fantasy leagues too. Would you rather have Bradford than these guys, or
I'd rather have Hoyer.
He's on a bye
I'd rather
this
have Hoyer
week.
than
But,
Bradford, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but the Vikings, to be clear, they've turned into a pass-first offense.
Yeah.
Which is what we thought would be the case when Adrian went down.
Mhm.
So, and he's performing at an extremely high level.
Yep.
The only problem is they don't have to
just
stay.
not fantasy.
They don't have to
It's
stay
just-
pass first. They score a couple and then it's lights out.
That's right.
The
And so
defense
you're
is
not
just too
you're
good.
never going to get explosive games out of Sam Bradford because they don't need him to do that. Mostly they need him to not throw interceptions, make a handful of key plays over the course of a game, and that's what he's doing. Let's go to the running back position. I think the biggest name available all week is going to be Devonta Booker. his availability was he's owned in more leagues than I thought he would be owned in. At least in my fantasy league, Devonta Booker owned in 33%.
Those are a lot more dynasty leagues, though, on MFL.
There are more dynasty and Empire
redraft
leagues.
and stuff
Yeah,
like
right.
that,
I think
so.
if you went to ESPN, I think you'd find Booker more like a coin flip availability.
Oh, I bet he'd be
Less
lower.
than that?
25% owned or something like that.
I think they're usually higher on MFL
Yeah.
from what I've seen.
And look,
so.
that's where the sharps play is my fantasy league, so that's going to be the case. Now, Booker ended up in a roughly even timeshare with C.J. Anderson last week, but it was a weird week because Paxton Lynch was so bad, and I think they were just trying to cobble together anything that might work. I don't know that they need to play that card next week, but Booker looked pretty good. C.J. Anderson's been okay. I don't think he's been bad. He's been okay.
Well, he's been this since he broke onto the scene in 2014, C.J. Anderson.
Yeah.
He was up and down last year.
He's been
so-
under 50 rushing yards in each of the last 3 weeks, though. So
Yeah,
that's a little bit
that's a worry.
concerning, and there's
No,
been some
it
good
is.
matchups in there, too.
I'm more concerned about Anderson than I am high on Booker, to be perfectly honest.
And that's fair.
You know,
He's a must-add for C.J. Anderson owners at this
if you're
point.
a C.J. Anderson owner, you have to go get Booker.
Yeah.
But
period,
does
end
this
of
turn into an Oakland Raiders style time
by
split?
committee? That's the worry.
That's
right? And
that's
that
the
would
real
neutralize
concern.
everybody to
Yep.
some degree. You know, 1 week ago we were pretty high on Washington for Oakland, and that ended up not really panning out. These running back by committee situations are brutally tough. Another good opportunity, though, you could start Booker on Thursday night. You know, he's playable. The Chargers' defense has been bad.
Well, Joey Bosa really changed that run deep for San Diego this past week. We all expected Washington and Richard to run through them,
right.
and they, combined for 60, 70
yeah,
rushing
that's
yards?
about it.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Bosa looked really good, but
Other thought on Booker is Kubiak's got a long history of using backs rotationally. So,
Does he?
yeah.
He used
You know,
Darian
Baltimore-
Foster.
Well, that
Pretty
is
much
true. That was
all
true.
alone.
That is true. But in Baltimore, you know, lots of guys came and went. One
Well-
season he galvanized on Forsett.
Yeah.
But only one season. So I don't know.
The year before it was kind of Ray Rice, though, wasn't it?
That's going too far back, and I don't even know if Kubiak was there for Ray Rice. Yeah, he probably was. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but we certainly have evidence that he's used a rotation of backs, including last year in
Last
Denver.
year in Denver, for sure.
You know,
Yeah.
and so yeah, there's all that. Okay, let's move on. Bobby Rainey, your guy in New York. You want to talk about his
your
prospects?
guy, Brian. You,
My guy.
you love that guy.
he's a great PPR play. It appears last 2 weeks he scored 14, 15 PPR points, and people are worried about Rashad Jennings, but that's going to eat into Orleans Darkwa, not Bobby Rainey. Bobby Rainey's playing the
He's
Shane
going to be the
Vereen
Shane
role.
Vereen, right?
So-
Yeah.
And it's his birthday on Sunday. Birthday bonus
I know how much you
for
like
you
that.
daily players out there.
Yeah. I think in DraftKings they give you an extra point if
They
you're
should.
playing on your birthday.
They should. So far, science has held up on birthdays. TJ Yeldon went off on his birthday in London. Mm-hmm. We're 1 for 1. So see how we see how it
One
goes.
out of one.
Yep, this year.
It works better on baseball when they're playing every
Every day. Yes, that's right.
It's hard to hit a birthday, so you got Bobby Rainey on Sunday, though, if you believe.
Jaquez Rogers had the big game on Monday night. 35 touches, which is absurd for any running
I
back,
believe
let alone
he
him.
had the first 7 carries of the
yeah.
game.
Yeah.
They just kept handing him the ball.
He's probably had seasons where he hasn't touched the ball that much.
No, his previous career high was I think 18. I think it was 18 carries was his previous career high, and I think he had 14 rushes last year. So nobody saw that coming. But now the Bucs go into their bye week. They come out of that, and Doug Martin's probably healthy. So, and if he's
Yeah,
not
I don't
healthy,
think I'm
he's
spending
close to
anything
healthy.
on him.
So I wouldn't put I wouldn't chase the Monday night game.
The only thing is if you're the Doug Martin owner and you had Charles Sims before and Charles Sims just went to IR, now you got an open roster spot. Might as well have the backup just in case. Get the
Yeah,
handcuff.
well, Charles Sims was rosterable and startable when the year started, right, with Doug Martin.
In a
I
pinch,
think
yeah.
I think Rodgers slips right into that Charles Sims role. I think he has a little more value than
Yeah, that may be as an ongoing maybe PPR
Yeah.
kind of back. I just don't think he's
Purely
I don't
PPR.
think he's as good a pass catcher as Sims is.
probably not.
That's kind of what his thing was in Atlanta when he was down there, right?
Nah, his thing was nothing.
His thing was nothing.
James Starks is potentially addable depending on Eddie Lacy's ankle situation.
worst backup in the league.
He's so bad.
He's
He's
awful.
1.8 yards per carry. He brings nothing to the table. But
Almost lost the game. Fumbled.
Yeah.
He's just awful. Like
He's
I
not
don't think
good.
I would play him if I owned Eddie Lacy and he was hurt. Like that's how much I hate James Starks. That's just me. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I think I don't have any problem with that. Here's your one scenario where James Starks might be rosterable. And I've got a 3% blind bidding recommendation on him. It's if it turns out that Lacey's got a high ankle sprain and they haven't told us yet, which teams do all the time. They're very reticent to actually tell us the ankle problem is a high ankle sprain because that's 3 or 4 weeks right there.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. If it turns out it's a high ankle sprain and you're going to get a month of starting usage out of Starks, okay, then I'm interested.
But he's the epitome of like the bad player that gets an opportunity. And everyone expects him to produce, but don't be surprised if he gets starters snaps and he just does nothing with
Jaquez
them.
Rodgers is a bad player who got a bunch of use too.
Starks is a whole nother level of bad in my
You know,
mind. But
the Packers don't have to.
Yeah, they don't have to run.
Have to run the
No,
ball.
they don't have to run at all.
it's true.
Let's go to the wide receiver position. Cameron Meredith started in place of Kevin White. He ended up being targeted 12 times. He caught 9 of them. He scored an easy touchdown, untouched kind of touchdown. Big body gives him some advantages in matchups and should give him some end zone use as well. And Alshon Jeffrey breaks down constantly, always dinged up with something. And they've proven that they just don't want to give Alshon Jeffrey the most targets in any given game. It's always somebody else. It's Eddie Royal one week. It's Kevin Wright one week. They never want to just throw only or predominantly to Alshon Jeffrey.
I think Hoyer just learned his lesson, and he's just not throwing it where the coverage is, and the coverage is going to be on Jeffrey. So he's finding Zach Miller open, and he's finding Cameron Meredith. Or Burgess Meredith, one of the two.
It was
it's his grandfather.
Yeah.
It was a great matchup for Meredith to walk into, though, against Indy.
Oh, for sure.
Number 2 receivers, it's like tried and true they produce. But
I don't expect this level of success to continue. I think people are going to overpay on Meredith.
If you want him,
I've got a blind bidding recommendation of 15% of your budget.
That's saying you don't believe in him, but I think if you want him, you're going to have to bid more.
Well,
not that you don't believe in him, but
because I do. I think he belongs on rosters.
But I'm
not breaking my bank on Cameron Meredith.
People are gonna though. So all I'm saying is you're probably not going to get him at 15%. Not saying you should bid more.
Last week at this time, I urged people to pick up Chris Hogan. Hopefully you did. You got 114 yards in the first half before he got knocked out with a concussion. Now, we don't know the status. It's Tuesday. We don't know the status of the concussion. We may not until much later in the week. But no matter what, I think he belongs on rosters because he was a guy who went into the game getting the most snaps out of any of the receivers. And then, the moment Tom Brady shows up, he unlocks a 100-yard first half out of Chris Hogan.
Yeah.
So let's go get him. Now I think you're going to have to pay more. Still available in about 1/3 of MFL leagues. Again, I think that number's a lot higher in ESPN and Yahoo leagues.
I'm nervous with concussions, though, all the time, especially the Patriots seem to have this problem with concussions in their wide receivers as well. You never know when anybody's going to be healthy. Man, it's tough for me to get off, Gronk and maybe Edelman as the guys that I really want to play, and now Martellus Bennett. I'm nervous about everybody else there.
Deion Lewis is coming back.
Yep.
They still have Amendola in the mix, of course, and Hogan, and there's a lot of cooks in that kitchen. It's
never going to be like every week I can count on Hogan. Yeah. But there are going to be weeks when he's going to have good games, and he was sitting on a gigantic one last week.
It's going to be hard to peg him, though.
No, you're right about that. It's going to be hard to know when it's coming.
Mm-hmm.
Adam Thielen got lots of extra run with Stephon Diggs out, and he ended up with over 100 yards. And I think there's a temptation to say, okay, but it's the Vikings bye week, and Stephon Diggs is going to be back the next week. So, that was a nice one-week wonder. But I think Adam Thielen now has clearly established himself as the number 2 receiver.
He definitely
in a
is. Vikings
offense that we've already just said we think is pass-oriented. And keep in mind, these groin injuries, as Arian Foster's proven to us year after year, a groin injury can be a month-long or even longer injury. Mm-hmm. We don't know that Diggs is going to be back after the bye week against Philadelphia. So, Thielen could be your number 1 for that game too, and maybe even the week beyond that. Who's to say?
And he made some really great catches. They weren't just the easy catches either. He made a couple of really good-looking ones. And the thing that makes me nervous about Thielen, though, is the Vikings have really spread everything around. They're getting Cordero Patterson involved, Jarius Wright, Thielen now. They have Diggs, they have Treadwell. And Charles Johnson's still there and listed as a starter. So
we won't forget Rudolph
that's not
either.
Rudolph
was limited, wasn't he, on Sunday?
You're not selling me on there's so much talent on the Vikings.
No, it's not that there's so much talent. It's that they just are willing to spread the ball around as much as possible.
Okay,
and I
but
think
Thielen
this was just
targeted. He was targeted 9-10 times in the game, right?
I feel like this is a spike, and it'll go back down, and just like Chris Hogan, it's going to be really hard to peg when the Thielen game is going to be.
I agree.
It's going to be so hard for me to start any Vikings wide receiver besides Diggs.
What do you have, 120 yards? Yeah, that was and a touchdown.
Yeah.
Yes, that is a spike for Adam Thielen. I think he's going to be startable many other weeks the rest of the way, even because he's just everything's trending towards him becoming a bigger part of this offense. And I think there are going to be weeks where you're going to be able to say, all right, let's assume that Stephon Diggs is going to draw main coverage. Who's going to be the secondary coverage that's going to be on Thielen?
I think we can agree if you own Diggs, you better be getting Thielen this week on the waiver wire. This is kind of like a wide receiver handcuffs situation.
All right, other guys that I'm not very interested in, but you could pick up Jeremy Curley. Back-to-back big weeks for him, but I think that if the media reports are true, they're going to bench Colin Kaepernick. Or sorry, they're going to bench Gabbert for Kaepernick, perhaps, or maybe even Ponder.
Maybe even
some
Ponder.
of the reports. So
I feel bad for Blaine Gabbert, man. He gets too hard of a rap. But
sometimes
the slot
his
guy
play
is
legitimately awful, and then other times it's kind of inspired. But what we know is that Kaepernick. Last time we saw Kaepernick, dude can't pass. So I'm not anxious to. I don't think Kaepernick would help Curly's value.
No, I don't either. And I don't think Gabbert is good or anything like that. But think about the situations he's been put in since he's been a rookie.
Oh, it's been
Jacksonville, 2012. That was
right.
and then San Francisco now.
All
but I
that.
think Curly, the slot guy, that's the money spot in Chip Kelly's offense. So he'll be dinged if Gabbert is benched. But I still like him long term. He's a target machine right now.
I would love on a personal level, I would love for Christian Ponder to get the start and be successful because he's a seriously good person. Would like to see good things happen to him if it works out that way. Kenny Britt, probably the least interesting top wide receiver for any team, which I'm not even really counting Tavon Austin, sort of, I guess maybe he's their top receiver, but he's actually top 67 yards in 4 of 5 games, Kenny Britt has. So, if you're looking for 4 or 5 catches, 50, 60, 70 yards, Kenny Britt.
Because everybody's just looking for that. That's
the
money zone of what you want.
Sometimes in a bye week, that's all I want is that out of my guy. And then Devontae Adams, 1%er. Hunter Henry going to the tight end position. One of the constant truths of fantasy football has been that rookie tight ends, do not produce. And this guy looks to be changing the script a little bit. And even with Antonio Gates back last week, they still threw him, 3, 4, 5 times that I saw watching the game.
Yeah, I was worried for his prospects last Sunday when hearing Gates was going to suit up because they want to get him. They say Gates is going to be limited, but that's never going to be in the red zone. They're going to put Gates in the red zone.
Right.
And they want that.
He got his touchdown.
But Henry had one too, and I saw that play. Gates was open, but Henry was wide open.
Yeah, he was wide open.
Rivers still could have went to Gates for that. So at least he did throw it to Henry in that instance. But I'm a little worried in the red zone for Henry because I think they're going to key on Gates a little more. But between the 20s, that's all him now. So
Hunter Henry in a dynasty league or an Empire league, got to feel really good about sitting on him in future years.
He looks like what Max Williams was supposed to be.
Yeah, that's a good point. Max Williams was supposed to be and he was in college. He was a really good dynamic pass catching tight end. It has not worked out. Although limiting Hunter Henry's long term upside is Phillip Rivers is got to be down to a couple of years left. That's it.
I believe he's 34, 35 years old. Yeah,
but maybe we're wrong. I mean, quarterbacks are playing longer than ever.
But nobody's talking about the end of Ben Roethlisberger yet, and they were the same draft. So
yeah, there you go.
And Eli, they're all the same draft.
Yeah. Last thing, we don't talk kickers often. I thought I'm going to make myself drum up a kicker recommendation. How about Jason Myers, your Jacksonville kicker? He has his bye weeks behind him now, so this is a guy who he's not a great talent, but he does get opportunities. He's playing for an offense that crosses the 50 a lot. It's a competent Jacksonville offense. And looking at the schedule, it's stunningly favorable for them until week 13, and then it's all bad. So, if you want to just pick up a kicker that you can just forget about for the next roughly 2 months, Jason Myers, Jacksonville kicker.
That's the biggest selling point. You don't have to worry about kickers anymore.
That's right. And if you're that kind of guy where you're not doing kicker rotation every week.
I would like to note that one other week this year, you told us to pick up a kicker in
Yes.
your fantasy free agent article.
And
it was Nick Novak.
Nick Novak, and he's
and
been
then
brutal.
and then they had 0 points that week.
Well, they got shut out.
They got shut out
that week by the Patriots. That's right.
So I'm not going to pick up Jason Myers.
All right.
Just
there
to
you go.
spite
My
you.
0 for 1 record on kickers might be enough. All right. Thanks for joining us. Coming up tomorrow, the Panic Room. Who's in the Panic Room, guys?
Us.
You two. Who's wearing the crown? Who's the champion?
That guy right there.
Right there.
You're the
reigning
king.
Champion.
You're the king.
The reigning champion. In the
I'll bring in
Panic
a
Room.
belt,
You bring.
and you can wear the crown. How's that sound?
You know, your wandering pubic hair is not a belt, just to be clear about that.
Okay.
And, yeah, well, you're the one that made the big groin area
Things just
thing
got
in
weird
here.
in here.
Yep.
What?
We'll be back tomorrow for the Panic Room. We'll see if Brian can defend his crown as we look at 5 players that fantasy owners are panicked about and find out if there is any legitimate reason for panic or not. Also, you can follow us on Twitter, at Paul Charchian, at BTXJ, at Explosive Output. There you go. Talk to you tomorrow.